welcome to the first game analysis. So if you notice in the title there is a rating range, and I marked it as less than 1500 lichess blitz. The reasoning for this is a lot of people don't have a national rating or a FIDE rating, which is perfectly fine, and I want to make sure that people have a general idea of what rating level it's targeted towards. And if you're saying, well, I don't like playing blitz, I feel like it's too fast, I like to play rapid or classical, that's okay too. If you're in that group, then I would suggest really the 15 or less than 1500 videos as well. And keep in mind, there's nothing wrong if you prefer to play classical or rapid over blitz. It's just a general guideline. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do before we even get into the game is we're going to go over to the little hamburger button here. You'll see computer analysis, and just turn that off altogether. It doesn't matter if you're in a study, I'm talking about just for general analysis. You don't need it. Generally, when you analyze, you want to either analyze by yourself or with a stronger player. And you might ask, well, what's the difference between analyzing with a stronger player and analyzing with the engine? A stronger player is able to explain the ideas to you, whereas the engine just feeds you moves. And if you're being fed moves by the engine, it's up to you to be able to understand why those moves were given. And I'm assuming that if you're struggling to improve, you might have a difficult time with that understanding. So that's why I would suggest you just turn it off altogether, and if you want to analyze afterwards, ask somebody if you're part of Discord communities or if you know people in real life. However you know chess people, I would ask them for help instead of consulting the engine. Just a recommendation. Obviously, you don't have to follow my advice, but I just want to help you improve. So going into the game, the first game here, I had white versus a 1000 USCF. And I think this game is pretty instructional, where it shows the importance of development, king safety, piece activity, and it also shows how to punish a lack of those things in your opponent. We'll get into this later, but I generally advise against studying theory for this kind of reason, in that you can't expect your opponent to play perfect chess. And that's why I generally advise against studying specific opening theory for beginners, which, for all intents and purposes, I classify beginners as less than 1500 lichess blitz. Intermediate, I'd say, is, 1500 lichess blitz to 2000, then 2000 and over, I'll say, is advanced. And, again, this is only for blitz ratings, and it's just a general guideline. It's nothing set in stone or concrete. Alright, so getting in the game, I opened... Ooh, that's weird. I'll just click the arrows. So I opened d4, d5, c4, the queen's gambit, knight f6. Now, knight f6 is a bit dubious, and the reason why is when I capture on d4, black has to recapture with a major piece, or not necessarily a major piece, but a piece rather than a pawn. So, for example, with the knight or the queen. And this allows me to then gain tempi. And what I mean by that, for people that may not be familiar, is let's say black captures with the queen. I can now recapture with my knight. And if the black queen goes back, I essentially just gained a free move. I developed my knight for free. That's what I mean when I say developing with tempi. So going back to the game, knight takes d5. I just make sure my d-pawn is well guarded in case, for example, black plays knight c6. Then I don't have to worry about black taking my pawn either with the queen or the knight. He attempts to capture that knight, saying, I see that you're defending your pawn, and I don't want to allow you to do that. So I gain a tempo by kicking the knight. Captures the bishop. I recapture. And then knight b4. And there's a threat here of knight c2, which would fork my king and rook. I would prefer not to allow that. So there are a few ways that I can stop this. The first way is bishop d3. Second way is knight a3. And then the third way is a queen move, somewhere, whether it's here or here, that covers the c2 square. So in the game, I played knight a3. But afterwards, when I was analyzing, I realized that this is kind of inaccurate, just in the sense that, one, my knight would be so much happier on c3, It's a much more natural square that better controls the center. And 2, I can actually exploit the fact that this knight is overextended. When I say overextended, I mean in your opponent's half of the board. Right? So you have 8 files and ranks. Right? So your half of the board would be whatever is contained within, for if you're playing white, the 1st through 4th ranks. You're playing black, the 5th through 8th. So his piece is in my territory. That's why I say it's overextended. So I could have, and I should have, looked to exploit it with something like queen b3, because now, not only is this knight attacked, or it can be easily defended with something like c6, it's also pinned to the b7 pawn. So let's say, for example, black says, uh-oh, my knight's attacked, let me retreat it. Now, unfortunately, black's losing material here after queen takes b7. So after either of these knight moves, I can capture either one of the knights, which would, well, let's put it on the board. So let's say knight a6, capture on c6. The only legal move is to block with the queen, and then I capture the rook. So that's obviously losing, so black wouldn't want to allow this. Hence why I think that playing knight b4 in the first place was a bit of an overextension. But I didn't see that when I was playing. I just played knight a3, controlling the c2 square. Pretty straightforward. Note that this does allow black to take on d4, but I am able to better develop, and you'll see how I exploit the fact that black has developed their queen so early in the game. In my analysis, when I played the game, I was kind of debating between bishop e2 or bishop c4. I thought bishop c4 was a bit more active, but then I realized, well, if I play bishop c4, this bishop is only defended by my knight. So if black finds some way to deflect or capture this knight, then my bishop would be undefended. And there could be some sort of desperado sacrifice, because this does come with a threat, but after like bishop c4, e6, now black is potentially thinking to play something like knight c6, where there is an attack on my knight, and I have to expend a tempo. So I'll just put it on the board, so say I castle here, knight c6. Now the threat is to take on a3, which would remove the defender of this bishop. And I would have to expend time taking care of that issue. But I'd rather not do that, so I just chose the safer square, going to e2, played e6, defending the knight, and I castle. And from here, I'll hide the move list. I guess it doesn't really matter since you could have paused it to see. But now you'll see the issue with black bringing their queen out so early. Black played queen e5, which I think is the first major mistake of the game. I don't know for sure what the thought process was, but I think black wanted to avoid allowing me to have the the d file with tempo. But you'll see that I can spring my dark square bishop to life with bishop f4. Notice that this pawn is hanging, but black would fall under some pressure after something like knight b5. So he moves the queen. Take the c file. Moves the queen again. I take the d file. Note that, oops, that didn't mean to draw that arrow, or that one. Knight b5 is also a good option here, but I chose to just centralize my other rook. He takes the pawn, and now I play knight b5. So if you notice, material-wise, black is actually up a pawn here, right? So if you count material, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns. Black is up 2 pawns. I have 5 pawns versus black 7. But if you notice, I have all of my pieces developed and reasonably well placed. I think maybe the only piece I don't like the placement of is this light square bishop, but that's not as big a deal because I have such a significant lead in development. My king is castled, and I have some control of the center, with the bishop and the pawn controlling some squares, as well as the other bishop controlling some squares. And my rooks are beautifully placed. So notice that material isn't everything, in that even though I am down in material, I have such a significant advantage in development and piece activity that it's like I'm not down material. And that'll become more clear as you practice a bit more, so you can see how that advantage in activity translates to wins on the board. And you'll see pretty shortly that black gets mated pretty quickly. There is a lot of pressure on this weak c7 pawn. So black attempts to defend it with bishop d6, but unfortunately, I can just take that bishop, and black's king is so unsafe that he actually can't recapture for what we'll see in the game. We were talking about it after the game, and we really couldn't find a defense for black here. We think he should have just resigned. Just in the sense that, say, knight a6 to attempt to reinforce this square, well, I can still just take on c7 anyways. Right? So see something like this. And now black's in a decent amount of trouble here. I have potential ideas of skewering these two pieces. Because let's say, for example, black castles, gets his king out of there. I take here. Can't capture on a2 because I take. So you may ask, well, how can I defend this knight? Well, you can't. The only way you can try to is by generating a counter threat with something like queen here, attempting to attack the bishop. But even then, you bring the other rook over, and now the bishop is defended via x-ray. So now black is just losing this knight. So you can see how, even if it doesn't result in checkmate, your development and activity advantage can most definitely compensate. And keep in mind, we are up a piece here, right? Because black couldn't recapture that, but now black is losing yet another piece, and the game is effectively over at this point. So going back to the game, I chose to take, and black recaptured. And there are a few ways to checkmate here. If you want to, you can pause your video and try and find all of them. The one I played, knight takes d6, king e7, take on f7, and then checkmate. Note that playing knight b7 is also checkmate. And there was another one I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's okay. I assume some other knight discovery is checkmate. Alright, well that pretty much wraps up the first game. I apologize if the video quality wasn't the best, as I'm new to this, but hopefully as I make some more videos, we can keep this going. If you have any questions about the game, or if there's anything else you want to know about, feel free to leave a comment, or if you just want to say how awesome or terrible you think I am, leave a like or a dislike and a comment. That's about it, and I hope you guys have a great day.